What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is part 6 of my reviewing and then ranking Frank Zappa cover albums. Other people doing Frank Zappa's music. Today, I'm going to discuss an album I found at a used CD shop, CD Exchange here in San Antonio, for like $1, and I had to pick it up, and I've absolutely loved it since then. It's Harmonia meets Zappa. Harmonia is chamber music, I guess, classical chamber music. I am not really into chamber music. I don't listen to much classical music. Almost everything I listen to that's classical has been inspired by artists like Stravinsky, though that was a Yes inspiration first before it was a Zappa inspiration. Varese, Ravel. I was into Ravel. But things like that. So my experiences in sort of the rock and metal world opened the doors to like the rabbit holes I went down classical wise. So I don't know much about chamber music or classical music, really. So if I make mistakes, I'm sorry. But this is a three-piece group. Harmonia Ensemble, I think, is their official name. It's not the famous Harmonia band from like the 70s. Three-piece set, mainly driven by Alessandra Garossi on piano and keyboards. The piano, just the straight acoustic piano, is the sort of the base, the foundation for a lot of these songs, both with maybe sort of the leading melodies and just kind of providing, the core, the foundation. We get Orio Odori on clarinets, and then Damiano Puliti on cellos and computer programming. And the computer programming is, there's only a couple songs where there's obvious sort of like drum programming that's laying the foundation, but apparently there's like a lot of samples, but the samples of like woodwind instruments or samples of like other instruments. I think there's a guitar solo sample on one of these. But the samples are used really well. Like it comes across for the most part as a non-electronic acoustic, piano, clarinet, that kind of acoustic energy type vibe. So it's not like there's just really like dominant mix of electronic music. It's used like very effectively, very simply, and it doesn't really jump out as like being jarring in any way, shape, or form. And there are some like sort of additional musicians that jump in on some of the songs to bring like a bigger sound. There's a flute player, some trumpets, a trombone, and a bassoon. This came out way back in 94. I think I bought it in like 95 or 96, again, for like $1. Listened to it. It did take me a while to get into it just because I wasn't really into music that is, at that time, pretty, I don't want to say sparse, or definitely don't want to say simple, but it's definitely, there's a lot of air, there's a lot of room. It's not cluttering up. It's a very simple palette of these instruments playing these songs in a very, very, I don't know the word to use, but a very almost sparse way. Though, of course, because it's Frank Zappa music, at times the music itself is all over the place, but it's definitely not cluttered or like, too busy in the sort of filling up the oral space sense. Really neat. I think I like the track listing on there. Some good selections of songs. There's a handful, 4, 5 songs which are originals, which, if I have a complaint, the originals are not sort of mixed in with the others. If this was an LP, most of the originals would be on side B. I don't know if this was released as an LP. I've only ever seen the CD. I know it is available on Discogs. I've seen it on Discogs. So if you are interested in, finding it. But the originals work. I'm not sure the originals necessarily sound exactly like Zappa. And if they do sound like Zappa, I think what the music reminds me of, not the instrumentation, but in some sense, the piano instrumentation, reminds me of something that you might find like in the middle of Gregory Peccary. They have a very narrative quality about them, the originals that are on here, where it feels like there's a story being told or there's a character that's being described, and we don't know who that is. We don't know what that story is, but there is a direction, there is a flow to the originals. And there's a couple originals that are both like near 6 minutes long. Something called Iudicio Iudicio, and then something called a Frank lesson, which are very lively and playful and have a lot of neat little melodic ideas throughout it and kind of have these nice dynamics. So the stuff that they're bringing that's not Frank covers, I enjoy. It's some pretty good stuff. Kind of reminds me, one of them, I think it's Eudicio, kind of reminds me of something you might hear on Peter and the Wolf. That is something I play in my kindergarten class every year, and we talk about using music to like drive a narrative and how to identify characters and stuff like that. And like, you know, the motif of Sasha the duck. Every time Sasha appears, you get that oboe sound and stuff like that. I think it's an oboe with Sasha, right? But anyways, it has that sort of quality about it where you can feel like maybe there's some cartoon character or some character that's being described. But I really like the original pieces. But the Frank pieces, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a medley of like 3.5 Frank pieces, and then 4, and then 6, 7, 8 Frank pieces. One of them does not work for me. I'll discuss that in a couple minutes. But for the most part, all of them work. And in almost all of them, at some point, the melody of the Frank song is there and it's easily identifiable. Like, you know, oh yeah, that's clearly this. But they're not in any way straightforward covers of any of these. Some of them have nice little intros in them that kind of eventually we wind up, you know, in like the main driving melody. Sometimes What's New in Baltimore, in particular, it's just a solo piano piece. And so it's just the piano player playing What's New in Baltimore. Really, really good energy there. You know, Peaches and Regalia, they cover that. Kind of has a little intro that leads into it. And then this is one of the more interesting ones because we get this like, and I almost do this every time because I don't listen to this that often, but I return to it, you know, maybe once a year, twice a year. And I kind of always forget about Peaches. But like Peaches is like, you get this intro and then we wind up in Peaches proper. And it goes on long enough where I always think, okay, this is a pretty straightforward version of Peaches. And then every time when I think that, we get some weird, crazy little section that is obviously not Peaches. I'm like, okay, now we're going off the rails. But then we go back into Peaches proper, and that goes on long enough where I'm like, okay, we're done with the weirdness. Oh, no, we're not. Now we have a short little bit of weirdness, back into Peaches, some more weirdness, back into the Peaches. But regardless, it keeps you on your toes as a listener because I'm never really sure, almost with every one of these versions, I always like, oh yeah, is this straightforward? No, none of these are straightforward. But just some good sort of taking these songs that are obviously Frank, preserving the essence of Frank, like those really strong melodies that he writes, preserving that and presenting those in a really fresh new context. I think an obvious comparison would be something like the Ensemble Moderne, right? And I think, you know, I think I read a review somewhere where like the only reason this is not as popular was because they didn't actually work with Frank directly like the Ensemble Moderne did, modern, and so they don't have the luxury of that free advertising. But I really like this. And again, my experience with chamber music and classical music is not that like vast. So it might just be that like there's stuff much better than this. But I really, really enjoy what's here. So it opens up with Intro to Music for Low Budget Orchestra, the sort of song that would open up the Billy the Mountains and like the 71 tour. That goes into, doesn't go into, but that's followed by, and that's good. Nice, simple, little brief introduction to that. Kind of always makes me wish we got that Billy the Mountain. Do-do-do-do-do. We don't get that, obviously, because it's just the intro. That goes into Hungry Freaks Daddy, or that's followed by Hungry Freaks Daddy. This is the one song I don't think works. It starts off with what I'm assuming is a plucked cello, you know, where they're playing it like a stand-up bass, because it starts off with the dun, 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 you know, they're playing that, picking those notes. And then I think it's the clarinets that come in that play, or maybe it might even be like extra instruments who come in and play like the like, dun, 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 bah, you know, they play the lyrics as the melody. And it just, I think if they had opened the album with that, with it, I think this straightforward sort of just cover, it would make more sense, because then the rest of the album sort of doesn't do that and deviates from that norm. But coming like second after the intro, I'm like, it's lacking something. It's just a little too plain, a little too obvious. they get to the choruses and things get weird and there's these bursts of weirdness throughout. And so they eventually do get interesting, but then they always return to that dun 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 dun. And it just, I think it's the one thing that needed some other twist to really make it work, at least as far as my ears go. We get the Peaches, which has moments of pure peaches and then moments of weirdness. Love the balance. The piano, What's New in Baltimore. A really good Son of Mr. Green Jeans that, again, really plays with that melody and kind of doesn't fully commit to that idea till we're pretty far into the song, and then just kind of gets crazier and crazier as the song goes on. It's like, what, 5.5 minutes of this? 8.5? No, 5.5 minutes. Yeah. No, 8.5 minutes? Yeah, this is a long one. Wow. But it's really good. And it's not like this full committed sort of like rehashing of Son of Mr. Green Jeans. It really is a nice, almost like reinvention of the song in the best way possible. With sort of what a somewhat chaotic ending. I think this is the one that has a guitar solo that is like sampled, like nobody's actually playing guitar, but I don't know what it's sampled from. That's not in the liner notes. So I don't know. I don't think I recognized it. Then we get this medley of Zappa covers. We get a really sort of probably one of the most deconstructed things on here, sort of a deconstructed To Mercy Dween. That goes into Igor's Boogie Phase 4. So you got hints of Igor's Boogie, but it's definitely not a straight Igor's Boogie cover. We get a cover of Aerobics in Bondage, and then we get a pretty straightforward Lumpy Gravy to close out this melody. It's about 6 minutes long total. Then we get an original called Luna. It's about 1.5 minutes long. We get a cover of Little Beige Sambo, the Synclavier piece. We get a series of originals, all of which work, all of which are lively and playful and are bringing something a little different and fresh. One of them is quoting some other songs, like easily recognizable songs. The one called A Frank Lesson. We definitely have some sort of recognizable melodies in there from like more common, like popular culture type songs. Then we get what might be the best thing on here, a beautiful, beautiful version of Waka Jawaka that is just absolutely fantastic. Just has just some really nice interplay between the instruments, the way the melodies are sort of revisited. It's definitely not this big, booming, dun, 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 big thing. It's much more like kind of mysterious and subtle, but you can definitely recognize those melodies, recognize those themes. It's a really good, really solid, good arrangement. And then the album closes out with sort of a return to What's New in Baltimore, though I think it's more of a full band type, not this piano dramatic thing. But I absolutely love this thing. I enjoy it. Again, I don't listen to it that often because there's way too much music out there. But every time I do revisit it, I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy those original pieces. I think for a lot of like, I have found, you know, if I'm listening to like a jazz cover of an artist or something like that, if there's an original number thrown in, sometimes it just fails to like match up to the rest of the stuff. This does not. The original stuff is strong on here. And this is a really, really good cover album from an Italian 3-piece chamber music, classical music, modern music. I don't know what it is, but it's, you know, it's that instrumental type piano, clarinet. Did I say cello? It sounds like it's a plucked cello, but I don't know if there's an actual cello. Yeah, there is cellos on here. I said that. A piano, cello, clarinet, mostly driven album. So yeah, where would I rank this among the other ones I've already discussed on this channel? I would put it, where is my list? Yeah, I have it right there at number 3. I actually have it above the Zappa's Universe because I do enjoy Zappa's Universe. But if I'm going to want to revisit, as good as Zappa's Universe is, if I'm going to listen to those songs, I'm going to go to the original material. I'm going to go to Frank's stuff. I do enjoy Zappa's Universe, but I think this is really offering something that, you know, Frank has, you know, his classical stuff, but this has songs I know done in a really fresh classical take. And so I would put it in number 3. I enjoy this album a lot. And I think it was probably one of the best dollars I've ever spent music-wise. But yeah, I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure you can get it if this is your kind of thing. I think it's a good listen. I would recommend it. Harmonia meets Zappa. I'm sure you can check out a track or two on streaming before you purchase it. If that's you want to make a safe bet. I don't think you can go to CDs like used to be. You can go to record stores and listen to something with headphones before you purchase it, which were some good times back in the days. I don't think you can do that anymore. So check it out on streaming, and then if it's your thing, get it. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. If you by chance have heard this album and are familiar with it, would love to read your thoughts about it. Or if you check it out, would love to read your thoughts about it. And maybe let me know whether it is a good representation of chamber / classical music. I think it's a good interpretation of Frank music, and ultimately that's what matters as far as this discussion goes. But that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, leave a comment, and go listen to music, people. Go listen to this. Check out I think my favorite thing on here, I said it was the Waka Jwaka. I really like that What's New in Baltimore piano piece. That's really, really good. So check that out. But peace. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.